Deep under Lake Superior, there lies a specter, not a human spirit, but a ghost of a ship. And the newest video has the experts chilled to the bone. Almost 5 decades since the SS Edmund Fitzgerald disappeared without leaving a clue behind, a state-of-the-art underwater robot has been deployed to the wreck site. Why did the biggest freighter to ever traverse the Great Lakes vanish without even a solitary distress signal? Was it the handiwork of a freak storm or something more preventable by far? Unreleased drone footage and long-dormant facts are coming together in a tale that promises to upend everything. What lies at the bottom of Lake Superior might not be wreckage, it could be a warning. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Spark Science, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. When the SS Edmund Fitzgerald glided into the waters from River Rouge's shipyards in Michigan, 1958, she was not another freighter but a marvelous floating one. Standing 729 feet long, she became the biggest ship built to sail the Great Lakes so far. Her purpose was simple: to carry enormous quantities of taconite iron ore from the mines around Duluth, Minnesota, to Detroit and Toledo, the industrial metropolises. But soon, the Fitzgerald expanded beyond purpose. She was a symbol. Commissioned by the Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company and constructed by Great Lakes Engineering Works, the Fitzgerald was christened after the company chairman, Edmund Fitzgerald, who took great personal pride in her design. Her shiny burgundy hull, chic white superstructure, and uniquely elegant lines turned heads wherever she went. Even non-shipping people could identify her as something special, a beautiful giant of steel and power. From the time she started her voyages in 1958 until the last year that she operated in 1975, the Fitzgerald had made over 700 trips on the Great Lakes. She was able to deliver over 26,000 tons of ore on one trip, and on most days, she broke speed records. To sailors and shipmen alike, she was affectionately referred to as the pride of the American side. To those who saw her sail past bridges or up and down the shore, she became a legend in motion, admired for size as well as for grace. But her fame was based on more than just being a pretty ship. The Fitzgerald inspired devotion in her crew. Her sailors sailed with her for years. One of the most seasoned captains on the Great Lakes, Captain Ernest McSorley, commanded her eventually but learned about her strength during these early years. He and his men believed in the Fitzgerald. On good weather days, she was a beauty to see sailing under the Mackinac Bridge, her horn ringing out over the water like a spectral howl. Families would step ashore to see her go by, kids pointing excitedly as visitors took pictures. And years from then, Gordon Lightfoot would set her name to music. But behind all that glory was the day-to-day job. The Great Lakes were merciless. Weather changed with short notice, ice, fog, and storms were ever-present dangers. Yet, for 17 years, the Fitzgerald battled on as if invincible. She weathered every storm, every freeze, every challenge, and still she never experienced a serious mishap. No sailor ever lost his life serving on her. She was regarded as being among the most respected freighters on the seas. To most, she was indestructible, a term history has seldom been lenient with. November 9, 1975, saw her filled with iron ore pellets and again sail, this time for Detroit. The Arthur M. Anderson, another freighter, traveled in her vicinity. Inclement weather was closing over Lake Superior, but to the crew, it was just another ordinary trip. Another storm. Another delivery. Nobody could have known that the lake was on the verge of producing one of the most notorious eruptions in recorded history, and that the Fitzgerald was headed straight into it. As she left that November evening, no one had any idea that it would be her final journey, or that she would become a symbol of nautical tragedy. By the morning of November 10, 1975, the tempest had become ferocious. Wind howled across Lake Superior at more than 70 miles an hour, and waves towered above 25 feet. Ice pellets sliced through the air, visibility dissolved, and the freighters battled to remain on track. Captain McSorley of the Fitzgerald, cool and experienced, remained in frequent radio communication with the Arthur M. Anderson, which followed her progress on radar from some miles away. Originally, it had been a typical November gale. But now it was a behemoth. By midday, the Fitzgerald was fighting. At 3:30 p.m., McSorley informed the Anderson, "We have a bad list. Lost event. One of the hatch covers is causing us some problems." In spite of the ominous report, his voice remained firm. He assured the situation was in hand. But the storm did not relent. At 7:10 p.m., McSorley called his final words, "We are holding our own. No panic. No mayday." Then a silence. Within moments, the Fitzgerald disappeared from the Anderson's screen. A ship that had been making steady progress just moments before was now nowhere to be found. No mayday. No flares. No wreckage. Nothing. The Fitzgerald and all 29 crew members were gone, lost in the storm. The Coast Guard initiated a search at once, sending planes, helicopters, and vessels. They combed the waters for survivors, rafts, or wreckage. All that surfaced were bits of small debris and a light oil slick. The enormity of the disaster could no longer be denied. At last, the wreck was located 530 feet below the surface. The Fitzgerald rested in two halves, her bow buried upright in the seabed, and her stern twisted and upside down adjacent to it. But rather than answers, the wreckage yielded only more questions. How could such a vessel, one that had braved hundreds of crossings, fail in a matter of minutes? Speculation abounded. Some believed in rogue waves, giant, towering walls of water that could consume even the strongest of vessels. Others suggested the Fitzgerald had struck an uncharted shoal, tearing her hull apart in the darkness. Still others believed she had suffered a catastrophic structural failure, weakened by years of hard labor in brutal waters. But none of these ideas could be proven. No bodies were recovered. No black box captured her final moments. No one survived to give the story. The quiet of her demise became the stuff of legend. She did not go down with a distress call. She simply disappeared, abruptly, without warning. For the relatives of the 29 crew members, that quiet was torturous. No final words. No goodbyes. Just emptiness. For decades, the enigma remained. But nearly half a century later, technology would revisit those icy depths. What the underwater drones would show beneath Lake Superior's dark waters would send investigators and historians into the cold. The silence surrounding the Fitzgerald's disappearance was soon to be shattered. In the wake of the tragedy, authorities, families, and experts raced for answers. But with no distress call, no survivors, and no witnesses, little was available. What ensued was not only an investigation, it was a decades-long struggle over accountability, technology, and truth. The United States Coast Guard conducted the first official investigation. Their report in 1977 determined that water had probably made its way in by means of hatch covers that were either damaged or not properly fastened. With tons of iron ore on board to hold the ship down, even minor flooding would have been disastrous. To the Coast Guard, sinking was due to a straightforward but deadly chain of failure. But the crew's families dismissed this account. To them, it was an accusation, a charge against men who were dead and could not defend themselves. Captain McSorley had been admired as an experienced mariner, and his crew had been regarded as competent men. To imply that they had failed to do something as fundamental as closing hatch covers was to insult their memory. The National Transportation Safety Board had a different explanation. They contended that the Fitzgerald could have experienced a catastrophic structural failure, and that she might have fallen apart while still afloat. Years of tough service and the violent loading of the storm might have cracked her steel backbone. Other explanations went around too. Some thought she'd run into an unmapped shoal in the zero visibility, tearing her hull open. Others subscribed to the rogue wave theory, that a 35-foot wall of water slammed into her broadside and pulled her under in seconds. Each had their fans, but there was no proof. During the 1980s and 1990s, submersibles took the first footage of the wreckage. But technology was primitive. Sonar provided only general shapes, video images were blurry and incomplete, the bow and stern were charted, but key information was still hidden. Missing hatch clamps, destroyed vents, and twisted steel beams provided clues but no proof. The Fitzgerald's last tale was still trapped in the cold. This confusion sustained the controversy for decades. Historians and engineers, unions and families, held fast to alternate explanations. The Fitzgerald was no longer a wreck, it was a monument to unsolved questions. But technology was moving ahead. In 2023, underwater robots, AI-aided photography, and 4K cameras provided scientists with new equipment. At last, investigators were ready not only to return to the wreck, but to let it tell its own tale. Time had arrived to peel away the legends and expose the facts. Nearly half a century after her quiet passing, the Edmund Fitzgerald was poised to tell her tale. Almost 5 decades since the Edmund Fitzgerald made its last voyage, technology eventually caught up with the questions that plagued Lake Superior. In 2023, an alliance of underwater engineering crews, AI-assisted researchers, and maritime historians came together to explore the wreck with a precision that had never previously been achievable. They had state-of-the-art remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, autonomous underwater drones, and ultra-high-definition 4K cameras with the ability to see everything within the debilitating depths. Sonar now could chart not only the basic outline of the wreck but even the finest stress cracks in her steel. AI-enhanced imaging might recreate whole sections of the ship in three-dimensional form, which experts would be able to view as she had appeared in her final moments. For decades, the Fitzgerald had been quiet, her secrets hidden away in mud and rusted iron. But now, for the first time ever, investigators had the means to pull back the silence. The expedition wasn't about discovery. It was about closure. It was about providing the families of the 29 crew members with answers that they had been seeking almost 5 decades. When the drones plunged into the icy darkness of Lake Superior, they recorded eerie photos, the bow still vertical, its pointed prow stuck in the bed of the lake as if it had dived like a spear, the stern capsized and twisted awry, a mass of twisted metal. Despite all the decades of conjecture, seeing the vessel in such raw detail was daunting.